World War II involved nearly every major and middle power around the globe, leaving few regions untouched by its devastation. However, one significant exception was the Republic of Turkey. While Turkey did officially declare war in 1945, just as Germany was on the verge of defeat, its troops never engaged in combat. The reality is that Turkey was never enthusiastic about participating in the war. So how did Turkey manage to stay out of the conflict for so long? And when it finally joined, why was it only under considerable external pressure and concern about being left out of the post-war global order? To understand this, it's essential to consider Turkey's situation in the years preceding World War II. The country was still recovering from its War of Independence, which had left it severely damaged. Following this period, significant reforms were implemented under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the nation's first president, as part of efforts to strengthen Turkey's international standing. At the onset of the Second World War, Turkey found itself in a unique geopolitical position. In 1939, nations were generally either global powers or colonies. Turkey was neither. This gave it a certain degree of autonomy, allowing it to chart its own path and resist pressure from more powerful neighbors in ways many European countries could not. In October 1939, shortly after the war began, Turkey signed a mutual assistance pact with Britain and France, signaling a leaning toward the Allied side. However, Turkey's lack of alignment with the Axis powers wasn't due to any particular animosity towards Germany. In fact, relations between Turkey and Germany were relatively positive. The real issue was tension between Turkey and Italy, driven by Mussolini's ambitions to dominate the Mediterranean. Importantly, the Mutual Assistance Pact didn't equate to Turkey joining the Allies. Instead, it resulted in Britain providing financial aid to help Turkey modernize and expand its army. Yet, Turkey remained firmly committed to staying out of the war, as made clear by President İsmet İnönü, who stated,
"For us, war is out of the question unless we are left absolutely no choice."
This cautious stance explains why, despite Britain and France being at war with Germany, Turkey continued trading with both sides. The Turkish leadership saw no clear benefit in entering a global conflict that promised few rewards for their nation. Still, if Turkey were ever forced to pick a side, its preference would likely have been Britain, especially considering its close historical ties with France, which had already fallen, and given that Italy had joined the war on the Axis side. Though we now know how the war concluded, at the time things were uncertain. Turkey began to feel increased pressure from both the Axis and the Allies to commit. With Germany and Italy performing well in the early stages, Turkey aimed to maintain good relations with them. In June 1941, Turkey signed a treaty of friendship with Germany. President İnönü was concerned about Stalin's potential territorial ambitions, and the treaty helped keep Turkey out of direct conflict. Just 3 days after the treaty, Hitler invaded the USSR, shifting the war's dynamics. Initially, the invasion progressed well, then not so well, and eventually, it turned into a disaster. As the tide of war changed, Allied pressure on Turkey intensified. While US President Franklin D. Roosevelt was comfortable with Turkey remaining neutral, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had different ideas. Churchill believed that the key to victory lay in attacking Germany's soft underbelly, the Balkans, a strategy that required Turkey's cooperation. It wasn't until the war's outcome became apparent that Turkey ceased trading with Germany. In February 1945, Turkey officially declared war on the Axis powers. This decision came only after securing assurances from the United States and the United Kingdom that they would assist Turkey in the event of a Soviet invasion after the war. Ultimately, Turkey's prolonged neutrality can be attributed to its leader's desire to spare the country further suffering, especially given its traumatic past. The nation had little to gain by siding with either the Axis or the Allies, except for long-term diplomatic assurances. In the end, Turkey's entry into the war was motivated less by a willingness to fight, and more by a fear of being excluded from the post-war international order. Thank you for watching this episode. Special thanks go to my patrons listed on screen now, and especially to James Bissonette, Party Boy Co., Zarka, Flash, Chris Wicker, Rob Waterhouse, Michael Reynolds, Gustav Swan, Maggie Pakowski, Winston K-Word, Raphael, Adam Harvey, Anthony Beckett, Sky Chappell, and the Amusement Park Ives.